There was a man who lived with his wife for 12 years. Every evening, he came home on time. Every weekend, he took his children to the park. Every time his wife asked, "Do you love me?" he answered yes. Not a single word he said was a lie. And yet, the day his wife discovered the truth, she broke down in tears and said she had been deceived for more than a decade. So what did he do? He never lied. He simply never told the whole truth. This is exactly the most unsettling idea this video wants to leave with you. Deception isn't always a false statement. Sometimes it's built from statements that are entirely true, carefully arranged in a way that makes you believe in a reality that never actually existed. What's even more disturbing is that the most skilled manipulators in the world don't need to fabricate anything at all. They only need to know what to hide, what to emphasize, and how to let you arrive, on your own, at the wrong conclusion they intended from the start. In psychology, this is known as the 7 layers of deception. And after this video, you'll never look at a conversation the same way again. Level 1. Telling the truth, but misleading. In 1990, an American pharmaceutical company released a painkiller and printed, in large, unmistakable letters on the packaging, "Clinically tested." Millions of people bought it because they trusted that claim. And the claim was entirely true. The drug had indeed been clinically tested. There was just one detail left unsaid. The results showed it was no more effective than a regular sugar pill. The company didn't lie, not a single word, and yet millions were deceived. This is the first layer in the 7 layers of deception we're exploring today. The lowest level, but also the most common, so common that most of us encounter it every day without even noticing. At its core, this layer is simple. The speaker doesn't fabricate any information. They simply select the parts of the truth that benefit them, then present those fragments in the right context, at the right moment, with the right phrasing, so the listener naturally arrives at the wrong conclusion. The danger here is that if you confront them, they can calmly respond, "Did I say anything untrue?" And they'd be right, they didn't, yet you were still misled. Consider a more familiar example. You ask a friend whether last night's party was fun. They reply, "There were a lot of people." That statement is completely true, but it doesn't answer your question. Instead, it subtly nudges you to think, well, if a lot of people showed up, it must have been fun. When in reality, the party may have been dull, or something unpleasant may have happened that they'd rather not mention. Psychologists call this technique selective truth, more commonly known as cherry picking. You don't invent the cherries, you simply pick the ripest ones to display, while hiding an entire layer of rotten fruit underneath. This tactic is everywhere in modern life. Advertisements use it when they claim 9 out of 10 doctors recommend this product, without telling you which doctors or under what conditions they were asked. Politicians use it when they cite economic data only from the most favorable period of their tenure. Even people close to you may use it when telling a story in a way that shows only the side they want you to see. What makes this layer especially dangerous is how difficult it is to detect. When someone lies outright, you can often sense the tension, the inconsistency. But when everything they say is technically true, your brain has no reason to raise suspicion. You accept it, you believe it, and you're led astray, willingly. So how do you protect yourself from this kind of deception? The most important question to train yourself to ask is not, "Is what they're saying true?" but, "What are they not telling me?" Because the truth that's withheld is often far more important than the truth that's revealed. Level 2. Deception by implication. In 2003, before the United States launched the war in Iraq, Vice President Dick Cheney repeatedly appeared on television, bringing up again and again the claim that terrorist leader Mohammed Atta had met with Iraqi intelligence in Prague. He never said that Iraq was behind the September 11th attacks. He simply mentioned the meeting, then mentioned it again and again. And in the minds of tens of millions of Americans, a conclusion slowly took shape. one that no one ever had to state out loud. Later, intelligence agencies confirmed that the meeting had never even happened. But by then, it no longer mattered. The war had already begun. This is the second layer in the 7 layers of deception, and it is far more dangerous than the first. Because at this level, the deceiver doesn't even need to say anything false. They only need to plant a seed in your mind and let your own brain water it until it grows. Linguists call this implicature, meaning conveyed through implication. It exists in the space between what is said and what is understood. And skilled manipulators know that this space is the most fertile ground for planting deception without leaving a trace. Think of a more familiar situation. In a meeting, the boss asks who made a mistake in the recent project. A colleague glances at you and says, "I don't want to blame anyone here." They never said you were at fault, but the entire room turns to look at you. That glance, combined with that sentence, creates an implication more powerful than any direct accusation. And if you react, you risk looking like someone admitting guilt. What makes this tactic so difficult to defend against is that it exploits how the human brain actually works. We don't process language purely through logic. We constantly read context, tone, facial expressions, pauses, and from those signals, we construct meaning. Manipulators understand this. They subtly control those signals to guide you toward the exact conclusion they want, while keeping their hands clean. You'll find this kind of deception in everyday situations. When someone says, "I don't understand how he got promoted," they're implying he didn't deserve it without offering any proof. When a headline asks, "Did politician X accept bribes?" it plants suspicion in the reader's mind, even if there's no evidence. When a friend sighs and says, "Well, it's your life," they're implying disapproval while avoiding responsibility for judging you. The only way to protect yourself from this layer of deception is to separate what was actually said from what you feel was meant. Whenever a statement gives you a strong impression of something you can't directly point to in their words, pause. Ask for clarity. Force the implication into explicit language. Because the light of clarity is the only thing that can dissolve the shadows where implication thrives. Level 3, half-truths. In the 1950s, major tobacco companies in the United States faced a serious problem. Scientists began publishing studies linking smoking to lung cancer. Consumers grew uneasy. Sales started to falter. So what did the companies do? They didn't deny the science. They didn't claim cigarettes were harmless. Instead, they issued statements like, "The science is not yet conclusive," and "more research is needed." Both statements were true at the time. But they obscured a far more important truth. The evidence was already strong enough to show that smoking posed a serious health risk. That strategy of half-truths bought the tobacco industry several more decades of survival, and millions of lives were the price paid for that time. This third layer differs from the previous two. Here, the speaker doesn't just select facts or rely on implication. They actively construct a complete narrative, one with a clear beginning and end, coherent, persuasive, and seemingly logical. Except it has been cut at the most critical point. Like a film where the final scene is deliberately removed because it would overturn the entire meaning of the story. What makes half-truths so dangerous is how difficult they are to refute. When someone lies outright, you can present evidence to prove them wrong. But when everything they say is verifiable, there's nothing concrete to push back against. Your sense of doubt becomes vague, hard to articulate, while their story remains clear, confident, and convincing. Consider a simple, everyday example. A child comes home late and when asked explains that traffic was heavy, the bus was delayed, and they had to stop by a bookstore to buy study materials. All of that is true. What they don't mention is that before catching the bus, they spent 2 hours at a gaming cafe. The story is logically complete. The most important part has simply been omitted. Psychologists refer to this as errors of omission. It's considered one of the most sophisticated forms of deception in media, finance, and politics, because the person using it can always defend themselves by saying they never said anything false. The uncomfortable truth is that all of us have been victims of half-truths. And if we're honest, most of us have used them at least once without realizing it. When you tell friends about an argument, have you ever conveniently left out the part where you were at fault? That's this third layer at work in your own life. The way to protect yourself from half-truths isn't to doubt everything. It's to develop the habit of asking one more question whenever a story feels neatly complete. Where does this story end? And why does it end right there? Because sometimes what matters most isn't in what's told, but in the silence that follows when the storyteller stops speaking. Level 4. Concealing the truth. In 2001, the energy giant Enron was one of the largest corporations in the United States, employing tens of thousands of people and enjoying soaring stock prices. But inside those gleaming office towers, the leadership knew a truth no one else was allowed to see. The company was on the brink of collapse. Massive debts were deliberately hidden within a web of complex subsidiaries, so intricate that even auditors struggled to detect them. For years, the executives didn't lie to investors. They simply never told the truth. And when the truth finally surfaced at the end of that year, tens of thousands lost their jobs. Millions of investors lost their life savings. And the Enron scandal became one of the largest financial frauds in American history. This fourth layer is fundamentally different from the previous three. In those earlier layers, the deceiver is still speaking, still engaging, guiding, shaping your perception. But at this level, they go silent. They deliberately withhold information that you have a right to know, information you need in order to make informed decisions about your life. This is no longer about selection or implication. It is calculated, intentional, and its consequences are often far more severe than a direct lie. What makes this layer especially dangerous is that it often occurs within high-trust relationships. A doctor knows about serious side effects of a medication, but chooses not to mention them to avoid worrying the patient. A homeowner knows the house has structural issues, but keeps quiet to close the deal quickly. A partner realizes they're developing feelings for someone else, but says nothing to avoid facing the consequences. In all of these cases, no lie is spoken, only carefully calculated silence. Psychologists draw a clear distinction between maintaining personal privacy and concealing the truth. You have every right not to share every detail of your life. That's a normal and healthy boundary. But when your silence directly affects another person's decisions and well-being, it is no longer privacy. It becomes deception through omission. There's a well-known psychological experiment in which participants play a game involving shared rewards. Those who withhold key information to gain an advantage often don't feel they've done anything wrong, reasoning that they didn't lie. But when the roles are reversed, when they are the ones being kept in the dark, their reaction changes completely. They feel betrayed, offended, even angry, as if they had been lied to outright. This reveals something important. Deep down, we understand that concealing the truth and lying are not morally different. The only real difference is how easily they can be detected. And because concealment is harder to detect, it is often far more dangerous. The best way to recognize when the truth is being hidden from you is to pay attention to the questions that are subtly avoided. An honest person who doesn't want to answer will say so directly. Someone who is concealing the truth will change the subject, give vague responses, or answer a different question than the one you actually asked. The gap between your question and their answer, that's where the truth is buried. Level 5. Distorting the truth. In 2009, a major British newspaper, a study with a sensational headline, "Eating chocolate helps you lose weight." Millions of people eagerly shared the article. Major media outlets picked it up. Within days, the claim had spread across the world. The striking part? The study was real. The data was real. The result was, in a literal sense, real. What the newspaper didn't mention was that the study had been conducted on just 15 people over the course of 3 weeks, a sample far too small to carry any meaningful scientific weight. The truth wasn't fabricated, it was simply stretched until it no longer reflected reality. This is the fifth layer, where deception becomes so subtle that the line between truth and falsehood nearly disappears. Distorting the truth doesn't mean inventing data or events. It means taking something real and altering its scale, context, or presentation until its original meaning is completely warped. Like looking into a carnival mirror, you still see yourself, but the image is no longer truly you. The most common tool used at this level is numbers and statistics. Nothing creates a stronger sense of objectivity and credibility than precise figures. If someone says, "I think this product is good," you might doubt them. But if they say, 92% of users are satisfied, your brain almost instantly lowers its guard. That's exactly why those who distort the truth love numbers. British statistician Darrell Huff addressed this in his 1954 classic, How to Lie with Statistics. He showed that the same dataset can be used to support completely opposite conclusions, simply by changing how it's presented. A company might claim 20% revenue growth, while in reality that growth is measured from an unusually low baseline after years of heavy losses. Every number is technically correct, but the overall picture is completely distorted. Beyond numbers, distortion also happens through manipulation of time context. A politician may boast that unemployment dropped sharply during their term, without mentioning that the downward trend began long before they took office. A salesperson might claim a product is at its lowest price in 6 months, without revealing that the price had been artificially inflated earlier just to create that moment of discount. What's especially concerning is how rapidly this layer of deception spreads in the age of social media. A clipped video, a miscaptioned image, a statistic stripped of context. Any of these can travel at lightning speed before anyone has time to verify them. And once the information embeds itself in people's minds, later corrections rarely catch up with the reach of the original claim. Protecting yourself at this level requires a simple habit that few people actually practice. Whenever you encounter a striking number or statistic, ask 3 immediate questions. How was this measured? In what context? Compared to what? These 3 questions won't solve everything, but they're often enough to pull a distorted truth back closer to its real shape. Level 6. Complete fabrication. In 2016, a man walked into a regular pizza restaurant in Washington, D.C., carrying a gun and opened fire. Fortunately, no one was hurt. When questioned by police, he said he had come to investigate a child trafficking ring supposedly operating in the restaurant's basement. The truth? The restaurant didn't even have a basement. The trafficking ring didn't exist. The entire story had been completely fabricated by anonymous accounts on social media months earlier, spreading at lightning speed under the name Pizzagate. But to the man holding the gun, that fabricated story felt more real than anything he had ever believed in his life. This 6th layer marks the point where deception fully breaks away from reality. There is no more selection, no implication, no distortion, no concealment. Here, everything is created from scratch. Events that never happened are presented as fact. People who don't exist are constructed as real figures. Forged documents are crafted with enough detail to appear authentic, and all of it is released into the world with a single purpose: to make others believe in a reality that never existed. What makes complete fabrication especially dangerous is that it doesn't need to be sophisticated. It only needs to be repeated over and over again. As early as the late 19th century, German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus discovered that the human brain tends to confuse familiarity with truth. A false statement, heard often enough, begins to feel true, no matter how intelligent or educated you are. Scientists call this the illusion of truth effect, and it is the most powerful weapon behind complete fabrication. History is filled with fabricated stories that reshape the world. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, published in the early 20th century, was a completely fabricated document describing a supposed Jewish conspiracy to control the world. Although it was exposed as a forgery as early as 1921, it was later used by Hitler as a central propaganda tool to incite hatred, contributing to the Holocaust, where more than 6 million people were killed. A fabricated story, repeated enough times in the right social context, can produce consequences that are devastatingly real. In today's technological age, complete fabrication has gained even more alarming tools. Deepfake technology can generate videos of people saying things they never said, with voices, facial expressions, and gestures so realistic that even experts struggle to tell the difference. Artificial intelligence can produce thousands of fake articles, millions of fake comments, building entire ecosystems of misinformation in just hours. The only way to stand firm against this layer of deception is not to doubt everything. That would make life unlivable. Instead, build the habit of verifying sources before you believe and before you share. Completely fabricated information often has one fatal weakness that real information does not. It cannot be confirmed by multiple independent sources. In a world where anything can be faked, the ability to trace information back to its origin becomes one of the most important defenses you can have. Level 7. Total manipulation. In 1978, deep in a remote jungle in Guyana, South America, more than 900 people drank poison and died in a single day. They were not forced. They were not restrained. Most of them poured the poison with their own hands, for themselves and for their children. The man who led them to that decision was Jim Jones, the leader of a cult known as the People's Temple. He didn't rely on physical force. He used something far more powerful, belief, built layer by layer over years, until those people could no longer distinguish between their own thoughts and the ones planted in their minds. This is the seventh and final layer, not because it is rare, but because it represents the culmination of all forms of deception. Total manipulation is not just lying, concealing, or fabricating. It is the fusion of all 6 previous layers, operating simultaneously, continuously, over time, with a single goal: to erase the victim's ability to think independently and replace it with a reality constructed by the manipulator. What fundamentally sets this layer apart is that it doesn't target information, it targets the person. The earlier layers make you misunderstand the external world. This one makes you misunderstand yourself. Victims of total manipulation don't just believe false things, they begin to doubt what is true. They doubt their own memories, their own emotions, and eventually their own judgment, to the point where they rely on the manipulator to tell them what to think and how to feel. Psychologists refer to one of the core techniques here as gaslighting, a term originating from a 1938 play in which a husband secretly dims the gaslights in the house, then denies any change when his wife notices, gradually leading her to believe she is losing her sanity. In real life, gaslighting works the same way. The manipulator repeatedly denies what the victim sees, hears, and feels until the victim gives up trusting themselves. Total manipulation doesn't exist only in extreme cults or authoritarian regimes. It can happen in ordinary bedrooms, in ordinary families, in relationships that appear completely normal from the outside. A partner who constantly tells you that you're too sensitive, that you misunderstand everything, that no one else could tolerate you except them, is following the exact pattern of this 7th layer. Not in a day, but over months and years, until you start to believe it. The clearest warning sign of total manipulation isn't just what you're being told, It's how you feel about yourself after each interaction. If you consistently walk away from a relationship feeling smaller, weaker, and more dependent than before, that isn't love. It's control disguised as care. And this is the most important message behind all 7 layers of deception. Truth is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it exists in the quiet space between well-crafted words. And the only thing that can truly protect you from all 7 layers is a version of yourself clear-minded enough to trust what you see, what you feel, and what you know to be real.